All right, welcome back to the PTZ Camera Operator Handbook online course. And now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff, the PTZ camera control options that you have as a PTZ camera operator, and they vary quite a bit. So it's important to take a look at them. I have quite a few different PTZ options to look at today. We've got a joystick controller here. We're going to look at a smartphone. We'll briefly reference the IR remote control. And then I also even have set up at my computer here. I'll move the camera just a hair. Right here on my computer, I have the PTZ Optics camera control app, which we'll take a peek at, and then the NDI studio monitor connected with an Xbox joystick. So like I said, lots of different camera control options that we will be using and demonstrating. This is about live demonstrations, really getting hands-on and also, reviewing the topics in full detail. So excited about this. Let's jump right in. So you've got a lot of control options for PTZ cameras, and most people start with the IR remote. A decent amount of people make it to a physical joystick, which is one of the best. And in general, we've talked about what a PTZ camera is, the parts of a PTZ camera, who uses them, the different types of PTZ cameras, and even the IR remote control. But we haven't talked about all the different control options, and there's so many. That's why I'm so glad you're taking the time to fully understand what a PTZ camera is capable of and the different control options that you have, because there's so many different options, and we're going to go over all of them today. So the IR remote control is the first one that people get introduced to. Many people use a joystick controller, and the great thing about the joystick is it gives you that tactile, dedicated buttons specifically for the task at hand. And we're going to show a joystick today that is called the HuddleCam HD serial joystick. But later on in this course, we're going to look at more advanced IP-based PTZ camera controllers like the PTZ SuperJoy. So very excited about that. We'll look at the smartphone app that's very popular right now called PanTiltZoom, but there are a few others out there that we'll touch on. We'll look at software on a computer, and we'll show the some of the different options there and what the differences are. And we'll use an Xbox controller. That's right, just a regular old Xbox controller here that is $20 or $30 on Amazon, and we'll take a look at what that can do for you as well, because it's affordable and it's pretty versatile, honestly. Now, each of these types of controllers have different connections to the PTZ camera, and probably the most popular is Ethernet. But it's worth noting that USB is a connection that you can use for camera control. We talk about in the book how the Universal Video Codec, long for UVC, is used with USB cables to control PTZ cameras. And it's really convenient to control a PTZ camera over a USB connection. So convenient, in fact, that I dedicated an entire chapter of this book to PTZ control with Zoom that requires a USB connection. RS-232 and RS-485 are analog connectors, and RS-232 is, there's different versions of it. We're going to look today at an RS-232 connection on the PTZ optics camera that I have set up here. RS-232 is analog. RS-485 is also analog, and it allows for longer cabling lengths, but it's a little harder to work with. And then, of course, IR, infrared. So Ethernet can be used to power the camera. So it's a kind of a 2 or 3-in-1 deal. It can also be connected to pretty much any network switch location. So it doesn't have to be sent all the way back to the joystick or all the way back to the computer. It just has to be connected to the network at large. And that allows for computers all over a different location to access the same camera, because everything's connected to the same network. Ethernet cables can also be run up to 100 meters. So 328 feet, that's a very long distance, and it's very common to find Ethernet cables. So also, Ethernet supports some really advanced PTZ controls. It does require networking infrastructure, and it requires some networking knowledge. Now, we're going to talk about that networking knowledge in our online course today that you're taking, not in this specific segment, but you will learn about the networking you need to use Ethernet for control. Now, USB is plug and play. So it's if a camera that you're using is integrated with UVC, the Universal Video Codec, then you can use software like Zoom and others to control your PTZ camera. And it's so cool. There's a dedicated chapter on controlling your PTZ cameras with Zoom. It doesn't require anything other than the USB cable that you're already possibly using for video. In some cases, USB could even power the camera, but it's not the most reliable thing in the world. You know, different USB ports like USB 2 versus USB-C versus USB 3 have different amounts of power and is not as common sources of power as Ethernet or the power supply. Now, the issue with USB that you should know about is that it does have a limited cabling option. So you can't really run USB cabling long distances, and that's something to consider. You do need to be able to, have something longer. Generally, if your camera is going to be 100 feet away, USB is not the option that you're going to be looking into. Now, RS-232 is one that we're going to show off today. It supports a very advanced PTZ controls with RS-232. So RS-232 is great. And it often supports daisy chain controls. So daisy chain controls will allow for shorter overall cable lengths. But it does require analog cabling. And so if you're already using Ethernet, this might not work for you. One thing you should know is that if you want to use RS-232, you can convert RS-232 from its serial connection to USB and then use that to control cameras with software on your computer. RS-485 is almost exactly the same as RS-232, except it is better for longer cable runs, and it requires different types of cabling and a different pinout. Now, infrared, which we had a whole chapter on, so I'll breeze through this, is very easy to use. It's totally wireless, but it has a short range, and it's not recommended for use outdoors because the sun can interfere with the sensor. Now, a joystick controller is everybody's favorite because it's a dedicated device. It has everything you need, and honestly, I'm just going to go ahead and just take a peek at the one I've got right here. You've got your quick camera switching, so if you've got 6 to 8 cameras, you can quickly switch between them. You can change the speed at which your camera moves. You can recall presets quickly and easily. You can remotely operate the on-screen display menu, so you can go through that. Focus, autofocus, all of these things, iris exposure, and setup mode. And there's like a nice little display there for controlling the camera. So if I zoom out my ceiling camera here really quickly, you will see that in front of the joystick, we have this nice little PTZ camera connected, and the speed's a little slow. So I might want to increase the speed a little bit here of the pan. And again, we're going to talk all about finding the right speed for your camera operations in the future. But now the camera's moving a lot faster, so you can kind of tune things in, and you've got this tactile feel that's quite nice. Now, the smartphone, which we'll be obviously talking about soon, is also pretty nice. It fits in my hands, so it's totally mobile. This is my smartphone here, so that is a great benefit. It's nice and easy to fit in my hands and use, but it doesn't quite have that tactile feel that you know is going to work for any volunteer, and you don't have to worry about your power going out on your phone or your phone having a text message come through or something. So this is a very nice tactile feel where you can go slowly and then faster as you're tracking subjects, for example. So I wanted to show that, in fact, this software right here that we're using is actually called NDI Studio Monitor. And we'll take a peek at that in more detail in a moment. So there's lots of different joystick controllers. We were just looking at the HuddleCam HD analog controller. There's 2 great IP joysticks we'll be taking a peek at in the networking chapters to show how networking works. And we'll look at the SuperJoy specifically, and for all of it's really a great option to see all of the different things that it can do, because You got the serial joystick, the IP joystick, and then the Super Joy can actually do serial and IP. So very, very interesting. These joysticks have knobs for fine tuning things like blue gain, iris, shutter speed, things of that nature. They obviously have the quick camera hot switching buttons that we looked at earlier, and then they have the PTZ presets. So a lot of options for PTZ camera control. And it's that tactile feel that a lot of people are used to when they become a PTZ camera controller. Now, we talked about the smartphone. It's totally wireless. It's low cost. It fits in your pocket. It's got a pretty good variable speed, and updates are coming to these apps all the time, so they are getting better. It does require a smartphone or mobile device, and it's dependent on not just Wi-Fi access, but also the battery life of your smartphone. But looking at the app here, you can see that on the top, we have up to eight cameras at the PanTiltZoom app. Now, as I said, there are other apps out there. There's other joysticks out there. We can't cover all of them, but this PanTiltZoom app on the top right has a little settings area, and we'll take a look at the settings that are available. It has a camera select area where you can choose up to 8 cameras. It has a zoom and focus area, and the interesting thing of why there's buttons at the bottom of the zoom and focus that will disable or enable zoom and focus. We also have the PanTiltZoom area over there with a tilt lock. You'll learn more about the tilt lock in our online course and the book, but essentially you can lock the tilt. So you're just panning left and right. If you're following a subject on stage at a theater or on somewhere where they're just moving left to right, you can lock that pan and you won't make a mistake. And that might be worth showing here on camera. Let's take a look at zooming in here. Here we go. There we are. Now, essentially, upside down a little bit. I got to spin this. Let's get disoriented. Sorry. There we go. All right. Let's zoom in. Okay. So this tilt lock here, if you hit it, now I just go left and right. And I can't mess up going up or down. Just an idea of the tilt lock feature. Turn that back on. The other thing is you've got these little taps. You can tap up and tap down in a very micro movement way, so you don't have to go too fast. One of the things we'll look at in a moment is this area where you have the settings, and this is where you can set up the preset speeds, the manual control speeds, and we're going to take a closer look at that in our presentation area here. There we go. Now, in the presentation area, this is where you have you can give it a quick little name. So that's those names at the top of the buttons. The IP address of the camera, which you'll learn a lot more about in our networking section. The VISCA port and the VISCA address. The preset speeds and the manual control speeds. So the preset speeds meaning how fast does the camera move between preset A and preset B. And then the manual control speeds, the joystick that you're using on the smartphone, how quickly does that move? Okay, now with software control, this is something we're also going to take a peek at today. We're going to go ahead and try the PTZ Optics PanTiltZoom Control app. And I'm just going to go into settings to show you kind of behind the scenes how this works. And we're going to use the ceiling camera. You can see it has an IP address there. And we're going to go ahead and click this camera. And you can see that there actually already are some presets that have names and they have pictures already. So that is helpful. Let's open the preview window here. And we get a live video preview. And now we can control the camera not just with with this software here, but we can actually control it with an Xbox controller as well. So a lot of different options here if you want to just turn a computer. Like for example, let's set this preset to be joystick and hit OK. Now there's a picture of that joystick. So when I go to another position, we can go back to this joystick area quickly and easily. Now it's moving at the speed at which, the PTZ presets. Maybe we want that to go faster. Maybe we want that to go slower. We'll talk about that more in the future. But we have the option to take a snapshot, save that picture if we'd like. And then there's even like a whole advanced section where we can adjust the shutter speed, the iris, the control speeds for presets and speeds. So that's why it's pretty slow. Might want to open that up. Turn a lot of these more advanced features we're going to be talking about in the advanced features chapter. So I want to stay focused on this presentation, but we'll dig into that in more detail. This is kind of like a high level, what types of camera controls. Now, besides like PTZ camera control software that you just looked at, there's software integrations, and these are really powerful. It's the ability to control a PTZ camera with OBS, with Wirecast, with vMix, with the video production software that you're already using. And that gives you an integrated experience for the user, right? So you can have new levels of camera operation and camera automation. So if you switch to a scene in OBS, it can automatically issue a PanTiltZoom command to move the camera. Same thing with Wirecast and vMix. You can integrate camera controls directly into the video production experience, but it does require sometimes an increased cost. So with vMix, you need to buy the 4K or Pro edition, or you need to have vMix Max, the monthly edition, or with Wirecast, you need the Studio edition. Now with OBS, it is free. So I highly suggest people kind of get started with OBS and then look into the paid platforms as their needs grow. This is a picture of OBS, and you can see on the right-hand side, the PTZ camera controls are built right in using a dockable controller. I have an entire book on the unofficial guide to OBS that goes through all of this. So it's not going to be, it's just mentioned in this online course. If you want to dig deeper into that, check out my unofficial guide to OBS course that goes into really how all the OBS stuff works. Same with vMix. vMix is what we use here at our studio. It's got great built-in PTZ controls, PTZ presets, connection options, and I have, a whole book and online course on vMix and how it works. Another interesting area of PTZ camera control is open source control software. And PTZ Optics actually has a GitHub code repository and a robotics program that educational students can apply for. But you can create your own PTZ camera control software with unlimited possibilities and potential for customization, but it requires the ability to code and have those skills. So that's something that not everybody has those skills, but if you do, the world is open to you there. We talked about the Xbox controller. It's USB. It's very easy to use. It's very affordable. It's nice. It's just not made. It's designed for gaming. It's not designed for PTZ camera control. So the controls kind of vary between application, and it's not necessarily ideal every time, but it does work. This is the Xbox control for the PTZ Optics camera app, and it shows you here how it works. So the key takeaways are the IR remote control is obviously very important for PTZ camera controls, but the joystick is definitely is easier to use in a lot of ways. It looks like I moved this camera, so I'm just going to move it a hair here. Here we go. And essentially, from a takeaway perspective, joysticks are dedicated appliances that are easy to use and will work kind of every time. Whereas a smartphone, I just had an issue with the Wi-Fi disconnecting for a second there. So dedicated hardware is for, really important video productions and camera operators. The IR remote is great for setup, right? It's great for a low budget. You can actually control 4 cameras with one of these IR remotes, but it's error prone to not receiving the signal every time. And it doesn't work very well outdoors. I am bullish about these iOS and Android apps getting a lot better, and their features are continually getting better. The latency is very low. You can see as soon as I hit the zoom button, boom, it's zooming, right? There's no latency. It's definitely totally usable. So I'm a big fan of these smartphone apps, and I think they're just going to get better and better. The same is true for software and software integrations, especially if you're a video producer using vMix or Wirecast or OBS. To have that integrated experience is really awesome. So that's it for this online video. I'll see you guys in the next one.